After 5 years of being deliberately isolated by my daughter-in-law from my son and my little grandson, I'd gotten used to lonely birthdays. But this year, on my 63rd birthday, someone knocked and handed me a glossy, chocolate-frosted cake with no card, no well wishes, just a curt text. "Do you like it? It's your favorite." I stared at the cake for a long time, feeling no joy, only a bad hunch. After all those years of silence, Madeline, my daughter-in-law, never did anything without a purpose. I texted back, "Your parents will like it more." Then I took the cake to her parents' house, planning to share the surprise with them. In under 10 minutes, my phone rang. On the other end, Madeline's voice shook with panic. "Mom, did you give it to them already?" I smiled faintly, set the phone down, and felt calm as a lake after a storm. Maybe the biggest birthday gift of my life is getting to sit still and watch my daughter-in-law dig her own grave. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. Portland, Oregon, a drizzly winter morning. I, Eleanor Price, 63 years old, sat alone in a small suburban house where the four walls had become my companions for 5 years. Since the day Nathan, my only son, married Madeline Cross, my life had shrunk into silence. From a mother who used to get a call every night, I became the stranger my own son avoided mentioning. That day was my birthday. I expected nothing, no calls, no flowers, not even a happy birthday from family. I brewed coffee, turned on the radio, tried to act normal, until a knock sounded at the door. A young delivery man smiled, cradling a white box tied with a red ribbon, and said, "Happy birthday, Mrs. Price. Someone sent you a cake." Stunned, I signed. As the door clicked shut, the room filled with a rich, sweet scent of chocolate. On the table, the chocolate cake looked so perfect it was almost lifeless. Smooth frosting, sugar flowers lined up as if measured with a ruler, and the words, "Happy birthday, Mom," piped in cold white icing. I flipped over the attached invoice the sender, Madeline Cross. My hand froze. In 5 years, she hadn't sent me anything but carefully planned silence. No card, no greeting, no phone call. Just a cake and the flavor she knew I loved most. I sat down and stared at the cake like it was a stranger wearing a crooked smile. Everything was too perfect. Madeline was always like that, gentle on the outside, cold and controlling on the inside. Anything she did came with a hidden agenda. My phone lit up. A text. "Do you like it? It's your favorite?" Just 8 words, and they cut like ice. No exclamation point, no warmth. A kind of fake sweetness I knew too well. I read it again and again, then smiled slightly. Someone like Madeline never acts out of affection. She wanted to see how I'd react. Would I be moved, or would I stay wary? I set down my coffee and typed slowly, "Your parents will like it more." I knew exactly what I was doing. If anything was hiding under that frosting, her reaction would be the proof. I placed the phone on the table and folded my arms, waiting. In under 3 minutes, the phone rang. Madeline's voice on the line trembled, rushed, like she'd just seen a ghost. "Mom, did you give it to them already?" "Give it to who?" I feigned surprise. "My parents. You can't let them eat it, do you hear me?" I heard her ragged breathing, then the call cut off. The room went quiet again, just the clock ticking and the rain on the porch. I smiled. A small smile, but one that reached down to the bone. This wasn't the first gift I'd received from Madeline, but never had a gift frightened her this much. Every time she acted kind, someone paid for it. And this time, I could feel it. The one paying for it wouldn't be me anymore. I stood, pulled on a wool coat, wrapped the cake in a clean towel, and turned the key in the lock. Outside, the wind slashed. My face and dry leaves spun around my feet. I knew exactly where I needed to go. Richard and Evelyn Cross, Madeline's parents, lived on the south side of the city in an old red brick house with lavender on the porch. They were the only ones in that family who had ever treated me with genuine kindness. I still remember Evelyn holding my hand after Leo's christening, quietly saying, "Don't be sad, Eleanor. Madeline can be a bit much sometimes." I would bring the cake there. Not to get even, but because I believed the truth only needed a small chance to show itself. I stepped out into the cold wind, but my heart was strangely calm. There was something in the air that made me believe my muzzled days were about to end. Instinct told me what a lifetime of being a mother had taught me. When Madeline acts kind, someone's about to get hurt. And this time, I'd let her hurt herself. I still remember the first time I met Madeline Cross Thanksgiving 7 years ago, when Nathan brought her home. When the door opened, she stood there in a cream knit dress, holding a bunch of wild daisies, smiling so brightly it took me a second to notice how cold her eyes were behind it. She reached out her hand and said in a softness that bordered on flawless, "I've heard so much about you from Nathan. I wish I'd met you sooner." The way she called me ma'am instead of mom, even after Nathan had said we were very close, made my chest pinch. A small detail, but as a mother who'd been a single parent for almost 20 years, I knew the weight of that distance. All through dinner, Madeline had everyone laughing. She knew how to talk, how to make herself seem refined. Even I, cautious as I was, couldn't deny she was charming and quick. But behind the smile and the warm voice, I sensed something cold, as if she wasn't truly part of the conversation, just observing and recording my every reaction. That look made me uneasy. It was the look of someone who wants to possess something not by force, but by careful control. Nathan, my son, was completely smitten. He looked at her with the kind of eyes only the love-drunk have. I understood. Nathan was always tender-hearted, trusting, inclined to fix people. After his father died, my son became the center of my world. We were a team together through loss, rebuilding our lives. And then, in a single autumn, a stranger made me feel like a spare part in my own story. After that first meeting, Nathan said in the car as he drove Madeline home, "I thought you'd like her more than that, Mom." I just smiled. "She's charming, son. I just hope she's truly good to you." That answer made Nathan go quiet, but I saw Madeline's eyes in the rearview mirror narrowing, as if filing away every word I'd just said. A month later, they got engaged. After the wedding, the changes came so fast I barely noticed at first. Madeline gently but firmly set rules for everything. First, the call schedule. "Please don't call after 8 p.m. We're having dinner." Then visits. "Mom, let the baby settle into a routine first, then come by." Everything was said politely, sweetly, unassailable, but day by day, the distance between me and my son grew into an invisible wall. The first conflict came the next spring, when Nathan said they planned to buy a new house. I looked at the budget and saw they were planning to borrow beyond their means, so I gently advised, "You two should wait another year. You know rates are high right now, and Madeline's job isn't stable yet." I hadn't finished when Madeline turned to Nathan, voice honey-sweet. "Hear that? Your mom thinks I'm not capable. She looks down on me." I went still. She hadn't raised her voice, but it was enough to change Nathan's face. He fumbled, trying to soothe us both, but I knew a seed of doubt had been planted. From that day, I became the controlling mother, the mom who won't let go. And Madeline, with her gentle act and long-suffering ways, turned everything I said into an invisible attack. Nathan, blinded by love, started to believe it. He didn't see that every word out of Madeline's mouth was a calculated step to make me the barrier between them. I tried staying quiet. I thought if I didn't react, if I stepped back, maybe things would cool down. I was wrong. Every time I kept silent, Madeline used it as evidence. "See? Your mom is mad at me. She's being cold to me." Then she told Nathan's relatives I was difficult, that I never accepted her as a daughter. I heard it from a neighbor, and the sense of betrayal split my chest. One evening, Nathan called, voice tense. "Mom, Madeline cried all night. She says you don't like her." I answered softly, "I never said that. Maybe I just need to learn to be quieter." I heard him sigh. A stretch of distance longer than any road opened between us. In the months after, I learned to live like a guest. I had to ask permission to call. I only visited when I was invited. Every time I walked through their door, I could feel there was no longer a place for me in my own son's house. Madeline never yelled, never acted rude. She used finesse to redraw the lines that always cast me as the intruder. When I brought gifts for my grandchild, she'd say, "Oh, that's so thoughtful. But Leo has too many toys already." And when I didn't bring anything, she'd sigh, "You must be busy. You forgot it's his birthday." No one realized it was all a mind game. Every move Madeline made was designed so that whatever I did would be misunderstood. Nathan changed. From the son who told me everything, he became a man who measured every word, as if afraid of causing conflict. When I asked, "Are you okay?" he answered, "I'm fine. Madeline just needs space." Needs space became the invisible wall pushing me further from the family that used to be mine. My world shrank to a small house, lonely dinners and old photos. I stopped going to gatherings, stopped hearing from anyone. People got used to me being absent. Madeline had successfully erased me from my son's life without ever having to confront me. Once, I heard her on the phone when I dropped by unannounced. "I just need you to understand. If your mom keeps interfering, I can't take it anymore." I stepped back, heart pounding. Nathan looked at me and said only, "Mom, please don't come without calling." The words were light but sharp as a blade. I drove home in the rain, knowing this war had no gunfire but was being fought quietly, day after day. No one realized Madeline didn't care about money or status. What she wanted to seize was the singular love between a mother and her son. To Madeline, love was a game with winners and losers, and in that game, she would do anything to make me the loser. I felt myself being erased from every photo, every memory, every conversation, every greeting, every holiday, no longer had my name. But the most frightening part wasn't being forgotten, it was sensing that my son believed this was right. Madeline didn't need to scream, pick fights, or cause scenes. She only had to smile, sigh, and say quietly, "I just want peace." And the world would believe she was the victim, while I, the mother who had loved with all I had, became the overbearing shadow in their story. And I knew she wouldn't stop. Ever. As long as I existed in Nathan's life, Madeline would see me as a thorn to be pulled out to the root. I don't know when this war began. I only know it never really ended. A silent war, no blood, no gunfire, but where every word, every gesture could kill a little of the love between mother and son. And in the middle of that storm, all I could do was learn to stand still and wait for the wind to change. The first Christmas after Nathan got married, I was giddy like a child. I wrapped gifts for the two of them and added a pair of wool socks for Madeline because Portland was colder than usual that year. I woke up early, baked waffles, simmered apple cider, and drove to their house before the snow covered the roads. I wanted to surprise them, to make that morning the start of a new tradition. Different maybe, but still family. When I knocked, Madeline opened the door with a polite smile so empty it echoed. "Oh, Mom, you're a bit early. We just finished opening presents." I glanced past her under the tree. Presents still sat pristine, shiny paper, untorn. I knew it was a prepped lie, but I said nothing. Inside me was a cold, sharper than the snow outside. She didn't need to scold or push me away. One gentle line was enough to make me the one out of place. Bad timing. Inconvenient. I stepped in, set the pastries on the table myself, tried to keep smiling. Nathan came out of the kitchen, genuinely surprised. "Mom, Why didn't you call first?" "I wanted to surprise you," I whispered. Madeline slid in, voice honey-sweet. "Maybe you didn't know we wanted to spend this Christmas just the two of us, to start our own tradition. Next year you absolutely must come, okay?" Our own tradition. Those two words sounded like a door closing. I looked around the house, strings of warm lights, wedding photos, and in the living room a framed piece that read, "Small family, big happiness." In the frame, only the two of them, smiling in the Sunday. No corner left for me. I stayed a few minutes, handed over the gifts, then made an excuse to leave early. Driving home, I turned on the radio to fill the silence, but the music only made the emptiness louder. I thought I'd get used to distance, but distance wrapped in politeness hurts worse than harsh words. That evening, I checked my phone. Social media was flooded with their happy family photos. Madeline in a red sweater, Nathan smiling, with a caption, "Our first Christmas, so wonderful to be with the ones we love most." I read the last line over and over, "the ones we love most," and realized I'd been off that list for a long time. The next year, I suggested hosting Christmas at my place, where Nathan grew up, where everything still sat as it had when he was little. Madeline smiled, eyes bright, her voice soft but firm. "My parents are older. Traveling wears them out. We should stay near them this year so they'll be happy." She and Richard were the same age as me. But Madeline used that reason to exclude me perfectly. No one could argue with something that sounded so dutiful. I nodded, tried to smile. I understood her game. Every reasonable excuse was another brick in the wall between me and my son. From then on, every holiday happened at their house. I started getting short texts. "Merry Christmas, Mom. No invite, no address." When I asked, Nathan said, "Mom, we're alternating between both sides." But that alternating happened once the first year. After that, I wasn't on the schedule. Gradually, I went from family to a guest who needed to call ahead. Anytime I hinted at dropping by, Madeline had a graceful way of making me withdraw. "Oh, Mom, today's not great. Leo's got a cold. We don't want you to catch it." Or, "Nathan's busy today, maybe another time." So I stayed home, staring out the window, waiting for a call that never came. One April afternoon, I heard from a neighbor that Nathan and Madeline had just thrown a birthday party for Leo. I wasn't invited. I forced a smile, said maybe they forgot, but I knew "forgot" was a softer word for on purpose. I tried mailing Leo a small gift, an animal picture book. A week later, the package came back unopened, stamped, "Recipient moved." I called Nathan. He picked up, his voice rushed. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back tonight." That night, the phone never rang. I started to realize that, in my son's eyes, I had slowly become someone without boundaries. Every attempt I made to reconcile was turned by Madeline into proof that she doesn't understand limits. She didn't need to yell or forbid. Just a few feather-light words, and it was enough to change the way Nathan looked at me. One evening, I called their house. Madeline answered, her voice gentle. "Mom, Nathan's giving Leo a bath. Is it urgent?" "It's not urgent, dear. I just wanted to check in. You're so sweet, but Leo's a little under the weather today, so we should turn in early. You understand, right?" I clearly heard a door close on the other end, then a lock click, a short conversation, crafted so precisely it made me feel ridiculous for trying to keep in touch. Day by day, Nathan began repeating familiar lines I knew did not come from him. "Mom, Madeline just needs her own space. Don't overthink it, Mom. Madeline is very sensitive. I just want you two to get along." Each time I heard those words, it felt like a small cut, not deep, but enough to bleed. Late one night, I opened social media and looked at their vacation photos in Hawaii. Under a picture of Nathan holding Leo, Madeline had written, "Family is where the heart finds peace." I sat still, realizing my heart had long been pushed out of that peace. I didn't hate her, at least not in the way people usually mean. I was afraid, because Madeline wasn't just controlling her husband with love, she was also rewriting his memories of me. Nathan used to tell me the tiniest things. The first time he learned to drive, the first time he slipped on the ice rink, the first dinner he cooked for me after graduation. Those memories were the threads that tied us together. But gradually, when I brought them up, Nathan would just give a thin smile. "I don't really remember, Mom. You probably imagined it a bit." I stayed quiet, but inside it felt like someone was squeezing my chest. Madeline had succeeded in rewriting our story, erasing the old memories, and replacing them with the image she wanted, the gentle wife, the distant mother-in-law. With each passing holiday, I felt myself fading a little. No one yelled, no one shoved me away. Just gentle excuses, nameless photos, and statements so reasonable they couldn't be disputed. It was the quietest kind of harm, not born of cruelty, but of loving-sounding words used to erase. I still remember, the third summer, Nathan called me after nearly half a year of silence. His voice was light, far away. "Mom, Madeline says you seem to make her uncomfortable sometimes. Don't worry, she just needs time." I answered only, "I'm not worried. I'm afraid that one day you won't remember who you used to be." When I hung up, I knew the worst part wasn't being hated by my daughter-in-law, but being slowly forgotten by my own son for the love we once had. And inside me, a quiet fear began to grow. Not of losing my son, but of him no longer knowing there was once a mother who would do anything for him. Leo's second birthday, the only grandson I have, was an occasion I had looked forward to for months. I prepared for a week, excited as if I might touch a little warmth from the family I'd lost. My kitchen was filled with the smell of vanilla cake, handwritten cards were neatly finished, and every balloon I chose matched the exact blue Leo likes. I even ordered a bigger than usual cake with the words, "Happy birthday, my little sunshine," because I knew Madeline always picked fancy but cold cakes, never anything playful or childlike. That morning, I got up early and chose a teal dress, the color Nathan once said suited me best. I carefully wrapped the gift, put it in a box with a small card. "From Grandma with all my love." I did. I wanted everything to be perfect, because I believed that if love is shown sincerely, no matter how cold Madeline was, she couldn't deny it forever. When I arrived, Portland was damp, raindrops ticking on the maple leaves. As I stepped through the gate, about to press the doorbell, I heard children laughing inside. My heart swelled with sweet joy. I thought I'd come at just the right time, that everyone was waiting to sing happy birthday together. But when Madeline opened the door, the smile on her lips made my joy freeze. Not because she scowled or was rude, her smile was simply too polite, too perfect. "Oh, you came, Mom?" she said, voice light as a feather. I was surprised. "Of course. It's Leo's birthday." She tilted her head, a flicker of fake pity in her eyes. "Nathan must have forgotten to tell you. Leo's party was yesterday." I stood frozen, my fingers still gripping the ribbon on the gift. My mind went blank. Inside, children's music was playing softly, and on the kitchen counter, leftover cake crumbs proved she was telling the truth. Nathan came out, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt, his face briefly awkward when he saw me. "Mom, I thought Madeline called you." I looked straight into his eyes and shook my head. "No, son, no one called." The room went dead silent. Madeline smiled thinly, slipped her arm through her husband's, her voice sweet to the point of sting. "He must have just forgotten to text you. He's been really busy." I understood immediately. It wasn't that Nathan forgot. She wanted me to witness my own isolation, to watch my son and grandson laugh while I stood outside the frame. I set the gift box on the table, struggling to keep my voice steady. "It's okay. I just came to wish Leo a happy birthday." Madeline glanced at the gift and gave a narrow smile. "You're so thoughtful. But Leo must have plenty of presents already, right, honey?" Nathan said. "Nothing." I could see his shoulders dip, like a man trying to balance between two cliffs. I bent down and kissed Leo's forehead. The child looked at me strangely, clear eyes not recognizing the woman who had rocked him to sleep when he was born. A vast emptiness opened inside me, something nothing could fill. I smiled, said a quiet goodbye, and turned to leave. Outside, cold wind slipped down my collar and made me shiver. On the drive home, I turned off the radio and left the heat off, letting the chill sink through my sweater. I needed to feel it, the true cold of a grandmother pushed out of her own grandson's birthday. That night, I sat in the living room with the gift box still in my lap. I didn't open it and I didn't cry. I just sat still, like I had buried a living person. It wasn't a funeral for anyone, it was for memories. Mornings I drove Nathan to school, afternoons we baked together, the times he hugged me and said, "Mom, you're my best friend." All of it had been swapped out, replaced with new traditions. Madeline built traditions where I wasn't mentioned. From then on, every holiday was just silence. No Christmas, no Thanksgiving, no invitations. I called, no one picked up. I wrote letters, pouring out the truest words I had, but no one answered. My mailbox was as quiet as a grave. Sometimes, I watched them from afar online. The photos kept coming, Nathan holding Leo, Madeline smiling, their house glowing behind them. Under each picture were hundreds of congratulatory comments. I read Madeline's caption, "My little family, we don't need anyone else." I sat for a very long time, staring at those last 4 words. We don't need anyone else. 4 seemingly harmless words that cut into me like a blade. Every time I read them, I felt the blood tie between me and my son being sliced a little more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went out to the porch, wrapped a blanket around myself, and watched the snow fall. The city was silent. The neighbors' windows glowed warm, and my house was cold and dark. I asked myself where I'd gone wrong. Maybe it was when I failed to push back from the beginning, letting Madeline's reasonable excuses grow like spider webs and bind every connection tight. I tried to recall the last time Nathan hugged me for real. The image was faded, only a brief warmth remained, and I suddenly feared that one day he wouldn't remember me the way I remembered him. After that, I stopped preparing gifts for holidays. Each December, instead of baking like I used to, I wandered through the market and bought a few small pine branches to put on the table. There were no laughs in my home anymore, just the faint scent of sap and the tick of the clock hand moving one notch at a time. But no matter how chilled my heart felt, some small part refused to go out. I still watched Leo grow through photos, still saved every picture of him to my phone, still read every post even though each line only hurt me more. I remember a time Madeline posted a picture of Leo learning to walk with the caption, "Nothing more precious than seeing your child walk on their own 2 feet." I laughed a bitter laugh, because that was exactly what I was learning to do, to walk alone on a road with no one holding my hand. I didn't blame Nathan. I knew my son had been swept into the sweet vortex Madeline created. She never banned him from seeing me. She just made it inconvenient. Not forbidden, but no room left for me either. Every night I still lit a small candle in front of an old photo, the picture of the 3 of us on Nathan's graduation day. In it, his eyes shone, and I was smiling, happy. I touched the glass with my finger and whispered like a prayer, "You'll see it someday, just not today." And I believed that somewhere beneath the memories rewritten by someone else, the real Nathan still existed, the boy who held my hand through the storm and said, "Mom, I'll never leave you alone." I waited, not for forgiveness or even reconciliation, but for the moment when truth would find its way back on its own. For now, I just had to learn to be silent, the way wounded mothers do, quiet but never without love. Back to the present. The smell of chocolate filled my small kitchen, so sweet it made me dizzy. I stood still before the pristine white box tied with a red ribbon, my heart beating slowly as if sensing something rising from the past. On the invoice taped to the side was a name that made me freeze: Madeline Cross. A chocolate cake, the exact kind I used to like, the exact style she once mocked. "You're too old to be eating sweets. Aren't you worried about your blood sugar?" Now sat neatly in front of me, on the wooden table by the window where the afternoon light washed in faintly. I stared at it, detail by detail, a mirror-smooth surface, even frosting, white sugar flowers arranged in perfect symmetry, not a single petal out of place. Too precise, too perfect, like everything Madeline ever did, and because of that, it didn't feel like an apology. It felt like a message wrapped in sugar and butter, colder than a December night. I closed my eyes and heard fragments of memory. Leo's laughter at the party I missed, Madeline's gentle, "My parents are so old," and Nathan's last words on the phone last year, "Mom, I'm busy. Another time, okay?" I opened my eyes, looked at the cake once more, then picked up the phone to call a taxi. I had no intention of eating that cake, I just wanted to understand. A silver taxi stopped in front of my house at 4 p.m. Portland in the fall still carried rain. Streaks of water slid down the car windows, reflecting the pale red sunset. I cradled the cake box, smelling sugar and cocoa mixed with damp cold, and felt a clear intuition. This was not a birthday gift. I gave the driver an address. "I need to go to Richard and Evelyn Cross's house." The older driver nodded slightly, asked nothing more. On the way, I looked out the window as the streets drifted by slowly. Kids ran in the rain holding red umbrellas. I wondered, Leo is 7 now, does he still remember my face, or has the memory of his grandma been erased from his phone along with the old photos? The car stopped in front of a red brick house on the corner of Cedarwood. The house was old but cozy, moss on the roof tiles, purple geraniums along the porch. I gripped the cake box, took a deep breath, and climbed the steps. The door opened after 2 knocks. Evelyn, Madeline's mother, appeared, her face brightening when she saw me. "Goodness, Eleanor. It's been so long." Her voice was still gentle, a mix of surprise and warmth. Richard came out behind her in a brown turtleneck sweater, smiling kindly but with a hint of caution when he saw the cake in my hands. I smiled lightly, trying to sound natural. "It has been a long time, Evelyn. I came because I think you two should see this." I set the cake on the dining table, untied the ribbon, and lifted the lid. The chocolate scent spread, rich and heavy. White letters across the surface read, "Happy birthday, Mom." Exactly the same lettering Madeline used to write on cards years ago. Evelyn frowned slightly. "Madeline sent that to you?" "Yes. Today's my birthday. I'm not sure if I should eat it or be afraid of it." Richard looked at me, then at the cake, his eyes shifting slowly from surprise to suspicion. "You know, our Sloane," I cut in, smiling sadly. "She goes by Madeline now." "Right," Evelyn sighed. "Madeline never does anything without a purpose. She's calculating." We sat down. I briefly told them about the text that came with the cake, about the years of isolation, about Leo's birthday being switched. Each detail felt like scissors snipping away at the fragile thread tying our families together. Evelyn went still, her hand over her mouth. She wouldn't go that far, Eleanor." I looked at her gently. "I used to think so too. But today, when this cake showed up, I could smell the setup the same as always, sweet but full of scheming." The air in the room thickened. Richard braced his hands on the table, his eyes hollowing. He was a man of few words, but that look told me everything. He understood. No words needed. I unlocked my phone and set the screen face up on the table. If she texts back, I'll reply, and put it on speaker. Evelyn blinked. "You think she'll text?" "She always does. She always needs to know how people react." The room fell silent. Only the clock's steady ticking and the soft patter of rain against the frame. I felt like I was sitting between two worlds. On one side, a truth too clear, on the other, the belief her parents still clung to. And then the phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a short message. "Do you like it?" The same familiar cold wording as 5 years ago. I looked at them and nodded. Evelyn held her breath. I typed slowly. "Your parents will like it more." Sometimes, a calm sentence is enough to make a liar show their face. I chose silence, but a kind of silence with weight. What about you? In your life, have you ever used silence to protect yourself? I set the phone on the table and turned on speaker. The three of us sat still, listening to the ticking clock between long, suffocating pauses. Evelyn gripped her husband's hand. Richard frowned at the screen like he was waiting for a time bomb to go off. I stayed calm, eyes fixed on the cake lying there on the table, beautiful and terrifying, like a work of art hiding a secret. No one said another word. Only the rain got heavier, drumming against the window, blending with the slow, steady beat of my heart. Inside, I felt something strange, not fear, but the calm of someone who's seen too much. Because I knew the next text would come. And when the phone rang, that would be the moment the truth, no matter how long it had been hidden, would speak for itself. The phone rang long, sharp, and cold like a tight wire in the night. Evelyn flinched, while I just looked at the lit screen and tapped to put it on speaker. Madeline's voice came through, shaky and broken, nothing like her old confidence. "Mom, what did you do with the cake?" I leaned back, my voice oddly steady. "I gave it to your parents." A long silence. I could hear her quick breathing, the clatter of movement like she was scrambling in a panic. Then suddenly a scream ripped the air. "No, don't! They can't eat it!" Richard and Evelyn froze. Evelyn dropped the teacup in her hand. The porcelain clinked softly and rolled a few times across the hardwood floor. Richard shot to his feet, his hand trembling on the edge of the table. He stared at the phone, then growled, "Madeline, what's in the cake?" On the other end, harsh breaths, then sobs. I only put laxatives." Her voice dwindled, halting. "Just so she'd be miserable for a few days, the way I've suffered for 5 years." No one spoke. The room sank into a thick silence, heavy as fog. Evelyn collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her cheeks. She murmured, almost to herself, "Dear God, what has she done?" Richard stayed standing, his face gone gray. He looked at me, then down at the cake in the middle of the table, still intact, beautiful, as if nothing were wrong. I saw his shoulders tremble. Then he stepped back, as if he couldn't trust what he'd just heard. I didn't speak, just sat quietly. I wasn't angry anymore, only deeply tired, like a lamp that's burned too long and is about to go out. My feelings seemed frozen. I'd imagined many ways her mask might fall, but I hadn't expected it to happen this fast or this bare. And then, as if fate wanted us all to face it at once, the door opened. Nathan walked in. He stopped short when he saw me, his in-laws, and the cake on the table. On the phone, Madeline's voice was still sobbing, weak. "Mom, please don't let them eat it. It's my fault. I didn't think it would turn into this." Nathan looked around, confused. "What's going on? Mom, why are you here?" Evelyn didn't answer. She just pointed to the phone on speaker. Nathan stepped closer, listened for a few seconds, and his face slowly drained of color. Madeline's voice kept coming. "It's just a little medicine. I just wanted her to know what it feels like to lose control, to feel what it's like to be tormented." Nathan stood frozen. 1 second, 2 seconds, then he blurted, voice shaking, You tried to poison my mother?" On the other end, the sound of labored breathing was clear. "It's not poison." Madeline shouted, crying. "I wasn't trying to kill anyone, I just wanted her to learn a lesson. I wanted her to know how it feels to be looked down on for years." Nathan stepped back, his hands dropping. I saw my son's eyes full of pain and confusion. He looked like the air had been punched out of him. "A lesson? For my mother?" his voice went hoarse. The woman who took care of you when you had Leo, who paid your hospital bills, who cooked for you every weekend, that's the person you wanted to teach a lesson. Madeline went quiet. Only choked sobs echoed through the speaker. Evelyn covered her face and cried, while Richard stood behind his wife, his gaze frozen. I remained where I was, hands clasped, strangely calm. I didn't feel vindicated. There was nothing to gloat about in a moment like this when a family fractures under the weight of its own words. Nathan looked at me, pleading and desperate. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know anything about this." I nodded and gave a faint smile. "I know, son. I know you're not like that." Madeline kept talking, but her voice was weakening, breaking apart into formless sobs. I just wanted his mother to stop hating me. I wanted her to know I've been hurt too." Evelyn choked out. "Madeline, what have you done? Aren't you ashamed?" "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what I was thinking." Richard roared, his voice rough. "Enough, Madeline. No one deserves that, not even Eleanor." The room went dead still. Rain hammered harder against the porch, rattling the window panes. Nathan turned away, fists clenched. He stared at the floor, then looked back at me, eyes red. "Mom, why aren't you saying anything?" I answered softly, "Because everything's already clear. Sometimes, son, the truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be heard." I glanced around the room, the one where I used to have warm dinners with them, where laughter once filled the air. Now it bore witness to a woman stripping herself bare with her own trembling confession. Madeline was still saying something, but no one was really listening. Each of us was lost in our own thoughts. Evelyn covered her face, shoulders shaking. Richard stared out the window, eyes empty. Nathan was like stone, one hand on the table, the other covering his face. I stood, walked over to the phone and hit end. A short beep, then silence. Only the clock's steady ticking remained, like time itself bearing witness to something none of us wanted to believe. I spoke quietly, my voice low but firm. "I don't hate her, but maybe for the first time she truly saw herself." No one replied. A draft slipped through the doorframe, carrying the smell of rain and the lingering chocolate in the air, sweet, but now making us all nauseous. Outside, Portland grew colder. The day's last light fell quietly, stretching across the table where the cake still sat, beautiful, perfect, and dangerous, like the person who made it. And I understood. Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. It arrives in the moment someone exposes their own darkness. When I pressed end, the room fell into absolute silence. None of us said a word. Even the rain on the porch seemed to slow, as if the whole world were holding its breath over what had just happened. The chocolate cake lay still on the table, its smooth frosting reflecting the pale yellow light. It was so beautiful it felt fake, just like the person who sent it. I sat quietly, fingers intertwined, listening to the clock tick. Each tick sounded like a knock reminding me that 5 years of isolation, of being misunderstood, of being pushed out of my own family, had finally been heard by someone else. Richard broke the silence first. He stood, slowly picked up his phone, and called a doctor friend. His voice was hoarse but steady. "I need a cake sample tested. Yes, possible contamination, we're not sure. Right, as soon as possible." Evelyn sat motionless, thin hands twisting a tissue. Her eyes were red and wet. She looked at me, then at her son, as if she couldn't believe the daughter she'd once been proud of could do this. Nathan stayed seated, elbows on his knees, hands clenched together. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot like he'd just woken from a nightmare. At last he raised his head, voice rough. "Mom, I believed her. I believed everything she said about you. I thought you were selfish, controlling, trying to meddle in our life. I looked at my son, the man I once carried, taught to walk, and proudly walked down the aisle. Now he sat before me like a lost child, eyes full of guilt. I reached for his hand. It was cold and shaking. "It's okay, Nathan," I said softly, my voice low but sure. "Being manipulated doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you love too hard." He lowered his head, tears falling. "I'm sorry for leaving you alone for 5 years. I didn't know what you were going through. I just listened to her, believed her, avoided you. Every time you called, she said you were trying to control me. I didn't want to believe it, but—" I squeezed his hand and cut in. "You're here now. That's enough." A small smile touched my lips, not joy, but peace. For years I'd longed to hear those words, not to get revenge, but to know a mother's love still had a place in my son's heart. Evelyn wiped her tears, voice catching. We saw her controlling everything, but we never imagined she'd go this far, Eleanor." I nodded gently. "She's always been skillful, Evelyn. No one sees the shadow behind that smile until it flips on by itself." Richard came back and said briefly, "The doctor says bring the sample to the hospital. He'll wait." Then he looked at me, speaking slowly. "Would you like us to go with you?" I looked around the room. Old photos still hung on the wall, Nathan and Madeline's wedding, Leo as a newborn, the Cross family on a beach vacation. Now they felt like witnesses to a happiness smeared by lies. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's go together." Before we headed out, Nathan said quietly, "Mom, I'll carry the cake." He lifted the box carefully, his hands trembling as if holding something fragile. The sight made my throat tighten. Years ago, Madeline had snatched a cake from my hands at a party, laughing, "Let me handle it, you're clumsy." And now my son was cradling her cake like evidence of the truth. Outside, the rain had eased. The road gleamed with reflected lights. The 4 of us, me, Nathan, Richard, and Evelyn, stepped onto the porch without a word. Cold wind rattled the dry maple leaves. I pulled my scarf tighter, feeling the chill seep in, but it no longer cut like the lonely winters before. Richard's car started. We rode in. Silence. Nathan sat beside me, staring out the window, glancing now and then at the box between us. I saw him clench his fists like he was trying to hold on to the last of his faith. I spoke softly, clear and light. "Nathan, don't let hate take over. Forgiveness isn't for her, it's so you can be free." He nodded, tears spilling again. "I know, Mom. I just don't know how to see her the same way anymore. You don't have to. We can't go back, but we can start again with the truth." We pulled up to the hospital. Richard brought the cake to the lab and handed it directly to the doctor he knew. While we waited, we sat in the corridor, cold seats under cold white lights. Evelyn sat still, hands knit tight, sighing now and then. I looked at them, the parents who'd raised Madeline, and realized that sometimes tragedy isn't just betrayal. It's the moment parents are forced to see the darkness in their own child. About 30 minutes later, the doctor came out, face serious. He nodded to Richard, then looked at us. "It isn't a lethal toxin, but there is a strong laxative present. In large amounts, it can cause dehydration and low blood pressure. Thankfully, no one ate it." Evelyn broke down crying. Richard put a hand on her shoulder, his face darkened. Nathan bowed his head, eyes closed, while I nodded, neither surprised nor angry. I simply said softly, "That's enough." We drove back without a word. The city at night blurred under a thin sheet of mist. Headlights shimmered across droplets, clinging to the windshield. I looked at Nathan. He was quiet, face heavy with sadness, but his eyes were no longer clouded. When we stopped in front of Richard's house, I turned to my son. "Nathan, thank you for being here." He took my hand, voice tight. "No, Mom. I should be thanking you for still being here, even after everything I put you through." I smiled lightly. "No one is born knowing how to be a parent or a child, Nathan. We learn, sometimes through pain." We walked inside. The air felt different now, not a room heavy with secrets, but one rinsed clean by truth. Richard set the lab note on the table, and Evelyn made more tea. I sat and looked around the familiar room. The frames on the wall still hung there, but their meaning had changed. They were no longer props for fake happiness. They'd become proof that lies can't last. Nathan sat across from me, calmer. "Mom, I get it now. No one can make me turn my back on you unless I let it happen." I smiled, feeling light for the first time in years. I no longer felt alone in this fight, because finally, the truth had witnesses. The official test results arrived 3 days later. The hospital's logo sat on the letterhead tucked in a white envelope, and when Richard set it on the table, the room went silent. No one needed to read past the first line. One short sentence made the air drop like lead. The cake sample contains a high concentration of a strong laxative above the safe threshold, potentially dangerous for older adults or those with cardiac conditions. I sat quietly, hearing Evelyn exhale a long breath, her hands shaking. I thought I'd braced myself over the past few days, but seeing the truth in black ink on white paper still pricked like a cold needle. No room for doubt. No chance of, maybe it's a misunderstanding. Richard and Evelyn agreed immediately to testify. They brought the recording of that phone call, Madeline's trembling voice, her admission of just laxatives, Richard asking, "How much?" and Evelyn's sobs at the end. Everything was handed to the police as evidence. I knew it was a painful decision for them. She was, after all, their only daughter. I remember the moment Richard signed his statement. He paused a long time before writing, his hand slightly shaking, then pressed down with one firm stroke. When he looked up, he simply said, "We have to stop this before she hurts anyone else." Nathan was there too, his face tense but resolute. He filed for custody of Leo, citing a living environment that's toxic and behavior that endangers others. In my son's eyes, I no longer saw the old confusion, but the light of someone who'd woken up. Maybe for 5 years he'd stayed quiet out of fear, but now he spoke with all the love a father can have for his child. I didn't attend the first hearing, but Nathan told me Madeline held on to her composure until the very end. She showed up with softly curled hair, a tasteful cream dress, and meticulous makeup as if powder could cover every mistake. When the lawyer asked about the cake, she gave a thin smile and said, "I only sent a birthday gift. She trapped me." She lied on purpose so I'd lose everything. I listened and felt my heart go as still as a blank page. I'm used to manipulation, and it still tightened my chest. But this time, I didn't have to defend myself. The evidence our recording, the texts, her panicked voice on the call spoke for me. When the police pulled the phone data, everything matched. The text, "Do you like it?" My reply, "Your parents will like it more." And the frantic call a few minutes later. Every word, every sob was a marker Madeline couldn't escape. When I heard the official notice that police were opening a criminal investigation, I didn't feel joy or triumph. I just felt sad. A deep, quiet sadness, like watching someone fall off a cliff you can't pull them back from. Madeline was temporarily barred from contacting the family while the investigation and court process went on. In that time, Nathan was granted temporary custody of Leo. I visited my son's house once and saw Leo on the living room floor, building a toy plane. He looked up, saw me, and his eyes lit up. "Grandma." Those 2 words alone made me turn away to hide my tears. 5 years he'd been taught to forget me for that long, and he still remembered. Some blood ties, even buried under lies, hold tighter than any words. The story spread fast through the neighborhood. Neighbors, friends, and Madeline's former co-workers all talked. Everyone was shocked. The woman once praised as a good wife, model mother, perfect daughter-in-law had become the center of a scandal. People who admired her couldn't believe it. Those she'd hurt sighed quietly. I knew something was off, but no one dared to say it. I got a few calls, some to comfort, some out of curiosity, some just to satisfy nosiness. I didn't blame anyone. People always trust a polished surface more than the cracks behind a closed door. Nathan said little during those days. I saw him grow quieter, his eyes drifting to the window whenever Leo played. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch, he said softly, "I'm ashamed, Mom. I let her run my entire life. But maybe, without this, I would have stayed blind." I put a hand on his shoulder, my voice gentle but firm. "No one knows they're being controlled until the string gets cut, Nathan. Don't hate yourself. What matters is you stopped." He was quiet, then gave a sad smile. "I just want Leo to grow up in a home with no lies." I nodded, feeling a small light slip back into the place in my heart that had gone dark. That evening, the phone rang. It was Evelyn. Her voice was weak and shaking. "Eleanor, we just saw the news. They said Madeline could be charged with endangering someone's health. I can't believe it. We raised a monster and didn't see it." I went silent for a few seconds. I pictured the Evelyn I once knew, a proud mother bragging her daughter was a college instructor, thoughtful, devoted. I understood that pain. For a parent, nothing is heavier than admitting your own child hurt others. I answered quietly, with the calm I'd built over years of enduring. "Evelyn, sometimes to truly see someone, you have to look at them when they're afraid. When the mask falls, only the real part remains." On the other end, Evelyn broke down. She didn't say anything else, just kept repeating, "I'm sorry. Eleanor, we're truly sorry." I sat still, listening to the wind through the window frame, and realized, in the end, I didn't need anyone's apology. The truth had taken my side on its own, not by shouting, but through evidence that can't be denied. Madeline could claim I trapped her, but no one believed it. A woman can stage a script as cleverly as she wants, but she can't control her own reaction in the moment of fear. That panic stripped everything bare. That night, I sat by the window and watched the rain. Streetlights reflected in my teacup like a thin streak of justice. No one won in this story, but at least the truth had a voice. And I knew that from the second Madeline screamed, "They can't eat it!" Every mask in this family fell away, leaving only one thing, the light of truth late, but still strong enough to tear through the dark. After the preliminary hearing, everything seemed to fall quiet for a beat. Years of suspicion, isolation, and silence had trained me for evenings with nothing but the clock ticking in a cold house. But now, that house had two more breaths in it, my son and my little grandson. Nathan packed up and left the apartment he shared with Madeline, moving in with me for a while until things settle. He said that, but we both knew he needed more than a place to stay. He needed a place to start over, a place to breathe without judgment. Leo, 7 years old, was shy at first. He tucked himself into the sofa, eyes scanning every corner of my little house. But a few days later, when I baked the first batch of cookies and asked, "Want to help, Grandma?" He nodded, stirring batter with small hands, grinning wide. That night, when I set the golden tray on the table, he whispered, "Thank you, Grandma." 2 simple words, and I had to turn away to hide my tears. For 5 years, I only saw him in photos online, where Madeline labeled me the distant grandma, yet one grandma, and it was like the distance never existed. Evenings weren't empty anymore. I told Leo bedtime stories of people who faced their fears, of courage and truth. He listened, sometimes dozing off mid-story, breathing slow and easy. Each time, I brushed his hair and whispered, "You're safe now, Leo." Nathan often sat in the corner with a stack of unfinished schoolwork. The desk lamp lit his face tired, but brighter than I'd seen in years. Once, when I brought him hot tea, he said quietly without looking up, "She made me think finishing school was pointless, that I wasn't good enough, not practical enough. Now I want to complete the master's program I gave up." I set a hand on his shoulder and smiled. "Me? I just want to hear your laugh again." My son's laugh where no one can snuff it out. He looked up and smiled. For a moment I saw the young man he used to be, the one who believed love could fix anything. He'd changed, and that change was the real gift. Of course, the darkness didn't vanish with one ruling. Madeline still called, sometimes sobbing, apologizing, promising therapy, sometimes cool, almost threatening. Long messages, half pleading and half attacking, flooded Nathan's phone. But we'd learned to hold our silence. No replies, no arguments. Once, when I saw him deleting the messages one by one, I said softly, "Don't let her keep living in your head." He nodded, gripped the phone hard, set it down, and his eyes grew steadier. A few weeks later, Evelyn texted me, short and plain. She won't go to therapy. She believes she's the victim, that we're all plotting to destroy her. I read it 3 times, then replied, "I understand. But sometimes, to see the truth, a person has to live with it, every day." That night, I opened my old leather journal, the one I'd filled for 5 years with pain and unanswered questions. I wrote one more line. The harshest punishment doesn't come from court. It comes when someone has to live forever with their own truth. I closed the book and exhaled. Life slowly slipped back into a rhythm so normal it felt strange. In the mornings, Nathan took Leo to school while I cleaned and tended the garden. Each afternoon, the 3 of us cooked together and talked about small things, Leo's favorite foods, Nathan's research topic, old stories I told again. One night, Leo asked, "Grandma, why isn't my mom coming home?" I sat on the bed and straightened his blanket. "She's learning how to be better." "It might take a while." "As long as 5 years?" I smiled, my heart pinching. "Maybe. But one day you'll understand. What matters is you're safe now, right?" He nodded, hugged his stuffed bear, and fell asleep. Late at night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlight glint on my teacup. Jasmine drifted in the breeze. Nathan's pen scratched across paper, a steady sound like the heartbeat of a house coming back to life. I looked at my son and grandson and realized those years of isolation had taught me this. Fear never fully disappears, but it shrinks when you have someone to face it with. When I watched Leo sleep, tiny hand holding the blanket, his face so peaceful it eased my chest, I knew he caught between 2 adult worlds, was the first to be freed. No more cruel lines about the controlling grandma, no more living in a house where everyone's afraid of making his mother angry. I turned out the light, stood in the doorway, and looked back at the house. Darkness fell, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, the place felt warm, not from a fire, but from Leo's soft sleep laugh, from my son writing at the desk, and from peace returning after 2 minutes storms. I whispered to myself, "There won't be any more scary nights." Then I closed the door gently and let the quiet keep growing. On the day of sentencing, a heavy gray hung over Portland. I sat in the second row of the courtroom, hands clasped, holding steady. Nathan sat beside me, and Richard and Evelyn were across the aisle. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in a few months. In the middle stood Madeline, smaller under the white lights, hair messy, mascara smeared. She was no longer the polished, confident woman who had blown through my life like a storm. The judge, an older man with silver hair and a steady voice, read the final decision. He spoke slowly, each word cutting into the air. Based on the investigation results, witness testimony, and recorded evidence, the court finds the defendant, Madeline Cross, guilty of intentionally endangering another person. Sentence: 2 years probation, mandatory psychological treatment, and a no-contact order with the plaintiff and related parties. 3 crisp strikes of the gavel. In that moment, I felt no triumph, only a wave of exhaustion. 5 years is a long road. I thought my heart had gone numb, but it still twinged now. Nathan gripped my hand hard. Warm, firm, a promise not to let go again. I nodded, looking straight ahead at Madeline, trembling. She turned toward me, eyes mixed with hate and despair. Her voice was raw. "She took everything from me. The words snapped through the quiet room. The judge looked up, calm but razor-sharp. "No one took anything from you, Miss Cross. You lost it yourself." Behind me, Richard and Evelyn broke into tears. Their sobs were soft, the sound of a burden with nowhere to rest. They didn't defend their daughter, and they didn't glare at me. They were just parents forced to watch their child destroy her own life. I stood, walked to them, and laid a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Her eyes were red as she looked up. I said softly, "Just for the three of us. You're still her mother, Evelyn, but right now, please save my grandson first." She nodded, tears rolling. She took my hand, shaking. "Thank you for not letting the boy grow up in the dark like my daughter did." I answered simply, "Sometimes love isn't about forgiving, it's about stopping." When we left the courtroom, Nathan walked beside me, holding Leo's hand tight. The boy looked around, curious. He didn't grasp the adult mess but felt the shift in the air. He looked up, smiled, and whispered, "Grandma, can we go home?" I smiled, brushed his hair. "Yes, let's go home, Leo." Outside the courthouse, October wind was cold and dry. Sunlight slipped through the gray, spilling across the stone steps so many had just climbed. I held Nathan's hand, my heart lighter. In my son's eyes, I no longer saw years of doubt, only a new certainty, the light of a man who had learned whom to protect. News spread quickly across Portland. Papers called it a wake-up case about psychological abuse in the family, where harm wasn't dealt with fists but with words and manipulation. They mentioned me, called me a resilient victim. I didn't finish the articles. A reporter came to the door, flashed her press badge, and asked, "Would you share your thoughts to help women who've lived through the same thing?" I shook my head and smiled. "I don't need an audience. I just need justice." She nodded, a little disappointed. I understood. The world likes stories that end in applause. Real life isn't a stage. I didn't need cheers, I just needed to watch the wounds close. That night, my small house glowed again. Leo built with Lego, and Nathan read at the table. I brewed tea and poured 2 cups, one for me, one for the photo on the cabinet. My husband's picture, kind eyes, a smile that softened everything. I sat, looked at him, and spoke as if he were there. "See? Our son came back. He's laughing again. And our grandson, he'll grow up in the light, not in fear." I paused, listening to Leo's laughter ring from the living room, clear, easy, alive. Nathan laughed, too warm and calm. The sound mixed with jasmine in the air, and I felt an invisible hand rest gently on my shoulder. I looked at the photo again and whispered, "See?" Everything finally found its place. Outside, a breeze moved the glass wind chimes on the porch. They chimed softly, like a late congratulations. I closed my eyes, felt the draft, and my heart went light like a leaf after storm season. After all these years, I understood. The biggest victory isn't making the wrongdoer fall, it's keeping your heart from turning to stone. That night, between the mild wind and the laughter of my family, I knew days without fear, without shadows, had truly begun. 3 months after the sentencing, Portland slid into spring. The cherry branches outside my porch were in bloom, pale pink and clean, as if no storm had ever passed. Life for me, Nathan, and Leo began sprouting again, not loud, not rushed, but day by day, little by little. Nathan officially went back to university to finish the counseling master's program he once left unfinished. Every morning he gets up early, makes breakfast, then heads out with Leo. I watch father and son walk down the little sunlit alley, and my heart feels light, like I've just gotten back a piece of lost time. At noon, the house is quiet again, but no longer empty. I started something new, teaching a cooking class for older people in the neighborhood. Just small sessions, about 6 or 7 retired women gathered in my kitchen. We make banana bread, butternut squash soup, and sometimes Leo's favorite lemon roast chicken. Laughter, the sound of knives on cutting boards, the clink of dishes, all of it blends into a gentle song. I'm not just teaching them to cook, we tell each other about kids who live far away, old memories, and the things still unfinished. I've realized healing doesn't have to mean forgetting. Sometimes it's just cooking a good meal and letting your heart soften. Leo's schedule is more steady than ever. School in the morning, swimming or soccer in the afternoon, and dinner at home with his dad and me at night. And every Saturday, he calls it Cookie Day, the day the two of us mix dough, bake, and try new recipes. Some days the cookies burn, some days they don't rise evenly, but Leo always laughs and says, "It's okay, Grandma, little mistakes make it taste better." That line, innocent yet deep, makes me laugh. Maybe that boy has taught me the lesson every adult needs. Mistakes aren't the ending, they're part of life's flavor. As for Richard and Evelyn, after everything, they started family therapy. One evening, Evelyn called me, her voice lighter than in previous months. "We're learning how to love again, Eleanor, to love without being blind, without swallowing other people whole. The doctor says we spent years living in fear of losing our child, so we didn't dare see the truth." I was quiet for a few seconds, then said, "Sometimes love can't save someone, but it can save you." I heard her exhale softly, then a faint laugh. "I understand you better now." The conversation ended peacefully, no hatred, no bitterness, just two women who once stood on opposite sides, now both looking toward a child growing up. Madeline is different. By the court's order, she has to attend mandatory therapy once a week. The doctor reported she talks little, often sits in silence the whole session, answering only when asked directly. Maybe that silence isn't remorse, but the last wall she's built to hide from reality. At each supervised visit, she still tries to look composed. The visitation room is bright, with a social worker observing. Leo sits on this side, and she sits on the other. "Do you miss me?" she asks, her voice shaky. Leo looks around, then answers lightly, "Today, Grandma and I made almond cookies. I brought you one." He pushes the cookie across the table but says nothing else. She forces a smile, tries to make conversation, asks about school and friends, but Leo only talks about soccer, the neighbor's dogs, and the butternut squash soup I make. No resentment, but no bond either, just a child who has learned to keep some distance from pain. I never interfere. I don't teach my grandson to hate his mother, and I don't tell him to forgive her. I only say to Nathan, "Let everything unfold naturally. Kids know who makes them feel safe." I don't hate Madeline anymore. In truth, I never really did. Hate is when you still want that person to hurt. As for me, I only feel pity for a woman who never learned to love without owning, who never knew love isn't a battle you have to win. One evening, as Nathan sat on the porch reading, he looked up and said softly, "I feel like I just woke up from a trance, Mom. Everything is clear, but it hurts." I sat beside him, watching the blazing red sunset. Sometimes waking up is the hardest part, but also the most beautiful, son. He nodded with a small smile. I knew he had truly stepped out of the shadows, no longer a man always trying to please others, but someone willing to protect his own peace. In the days that followed, the house filled with laughter. At dinner, we sat around the table. Leo told school stories, Nathan asked questions, and I chimed in with a smile. Those simple moments, what many families see as ordinary, felt like a miracle to me. One night, while I was clearing the table, Nathan suddenly said, "You know, if anyone asks me who won in all this, I'll say no one." I looked at my son, smiled, and replied, "That's right. I didn't win either. I only beat the silence." The room turned warmly bright. Light fell across the rose. New family photo, me, Nathan, and Leo. A small family, not perfect, but real and peaceful. I looked at the two men in my life, and gratitude rose in me. After everything, I realized justice isn't only in a court ruling, it's in choosing to step through pain and keep living, to love without fear. And when night fell, I heard Leo's laughter from the bedroom, mixed with Nathan softly humming an old song. I closed my eyes, my heart full of calm. Not because the past had vanished, but because it no longer scared me. In the end, I understood. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering without the pain. 6 months after the verdict, Portland was bright again. Early spring light streamed across the porch, touching the pots of marigolds I'd just repotted, making the little house glow with another layer of peace. Leo tore around the yard with the rescue puppy we'd just adopted. He named him Muffin because he said it sounded yummy and happy. A child's laughter mixed with crisp barks, echoing through the open doors like the sound this house had been waiting for all these years. On the kitchen table, my dark leather journal lay open to the last page. I wrote slowly, carefully, as if stitching tiny tears in memory. A birthday cake changed the fate of an entire family. I set down the pen and looked out at the porch. Not because the cake had magic, but because it forced the truth to show itself. Everything started with something that seemed small, a cake with no card, no greeting, holding a single secret under the frosting. But sometimes the most ordinary things are the starting point of a great awakening. Nathan walked in, shirt slung over his shoulder, tired but glowing. He had just finished his first term back at school, with excellent results. He said, as if letting go of a weight, "You know, Mom, for the first time in years, I feel like I can really breathe." I looked at my son, not the man once controlled by fear, but someone learning to live and choose for himself. I just answered softly, "Good, Nathan, you're becoming yourself again." Madeline kept up with mandatory therapy. I heard from Evelyn that she spoke little, but at least she wasn't denying anymore. "Everything takes time," the doctor said. I believe that. We all have our own prisons. Some break the lock, some choose to stay. Whatever the outcome, I know I've let go of the part that wasn't mine to carry. What I need now isn't an apology. I just need every child to grow up safe and respected, not turned into a weapon in adults' hands. I need the world to be gentler to young hearts so no one has to learn about love through fear. As evening fell, sunlight swept across the kitchen, turning everything the color of honey. Leo ran in with muddy hands and sparkling eyes. "Grandma, can we bake again tomorrow?" I smiled. "Yes, but this time you'll dust the powdered sugar. I want to see how my little artist does it." He nodded, thrilled, and ran off to get ready, leaving behind the scent of sunshine, soil, and bright laughter. I turned back to the kitchen, the witness to lonely nights and unseen tears. Now it was warm and alive, full of voices, butter, cookies, and unfinished stories retold with smiles. I smiled, full of gratitude. The storm had passed, but the roof still stood. Our little family no longer chases perfect. We reset the meaning of home. Not glossy photos or lavish parties, but a place where people can be honest with each other. Where you can say, "I'm sad today," without being judged. For us, home now rests on 3 values: honesty, boundaries, and kindness. As the light faded, I closed my journal. The old ink on the cover had faded, but the ease in my chest was clearer than ever. I lifted my eyes to Portland's sky, where the sun was sinking behind thin clouds, the gold melting slowly like honey. It reminded me of the days when I believed happiness had to be fought for. Now I know it comes when we stop resisting and start living true. I heard Nathan laughing with Leo in the yard, their footsteps chasing each other, the dog barking in time with the breeze. That everyday sound, so simple, was the music of our rebirth. I sat a little longer, took a sip of warm tea, then wrote one last line, a gentle close to this journey. No one truly won. We just learned how to stand up together. Then I set down the pen and spoke to myself as well as to those listening from the other side of the screen. If you stayed with me to the end of this story, I want to say a heartfelt thank you. Thank you for walking with me through the storms, through the fear, and through the moments when we learn to trust people again. I'm truly grateful you spent your time here. Where are you watching from in the world? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story and which moment in this journey touched you most. And if this story meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and come back for the next episodes where we keep telling the truth, keep healing, and keep growing. I smiled and closed the journal. Outside, sunset spilled over the roof, bright and gentle, like time's embrace. An old chapter closed, but the light this time stayed.